sir. Delivery entrance is in the back. Christopher D. Wren stood perfectly still on the marble steps of the Grand Meridian Hotel, his custom-tailored charcoal suit catching the morning light. The doorman, a portly white man in his 50s, held up a gloved hand as if directing traffic, his eyes already dismissing Christopher before even fully taking him in. "I'm not here to deliver," Christopher said calmly, reaching into his inner pocket. "I'm here to take my seat." He produced a sleek black card with silver lettering. Christopher D. Wren, shareholder voting proxy. The doorman's face drained of color as he read it, his mouth opening and closing like a fish, gasping for air. Behind him, through the glass doors, the lobby buzzed with suited executives hurrying toward the conference level. "I apologize. Ici. Right this way." The doorman stumbled over his words, suddenly deferential. Christopher didn't move. "No need. I know where I'm going." He walked past the flustered man, his footsteps echoing across the pristine marble floor. In 30 minutes, the board of directors of IronFall Robotics would convene for their annual shareholder meeting. They were preparing to vote in a new CEO, completely unaware that the majority shareholder had just walked through their doors and that he'd been mistaken for the help. Christopher David Wren had built his fortune in shadows. At 38, he controlled Wren Equity Partners, a private investment firm that operated through a labyrinth of holding companies and anonymous trusts. His mother, a high school mathematics teacher in Atlanta, had raised him alone after his father's death when Christopher was 7. She'd taught him that numbers never lie, but people often do. Always let them show you who they are first. She'd told him the day he graduated from MIT with dual degrees in engineering and finance. Then show them who you are. He'd taken her advice to heart, building his empire quietly, strategically, while his Harvard Business School classmates chased headlines and magazine covers. Christopher accumulated wealth through careful acquisitions and patient investing. His companies owned companies that owned companies, creating a web of influence that few could trace back to him. IronFall Robotics had caught his attention 18 months ago. The automation giant was hemorrhaging money, despite holding revolutionary patents in manufacturing robotics. Christopher's research revealed why. Nepotism, discrimination, and a board more interested in protecting their golf buddies than shareholder value. He'd begun buying shares through various shells, accumulating power while remaining invisible. The lobby attendant, a young woman with a practiced smile, looked up as he approached the executive elevator. Her expression flickered with confusion. "Can I help you find something?" "The board meeting. 32nd floor." Her fingers hesitated over her tablet. "Are you with catering or security?" Christopher smiled thinly. "Neither. I'm a shareholder." "Oh." Her cheeks flushed. "Of course. May I see your invitation?" He handed over his proxy documentation. Her eyes widened as she scanned it, clearly not expecting to see controlling interest percentages next to his name. "Right away. Mr. Wren. The elevator is—" "I know where it is." He walked past her toward the bank of elevators, leaving her staring after him. As the elevator climbed, Christopher reviewed his mental files on each board member. Richard Huntington Dry, the interim chairman, inherited his seat from his father. Marcus Webb, the CFO, had been cooking the books for years, hiding losses in subsidiary accounts. Patricia Morse, head of HR, had systematically passed over minority candidates for executive positions, while maintaining a paper trail that suggested otherwise. They thought they were untouchable. They were about to learn otherwise. The elevator opened onto a hallway, lined with abstract art and fresh flowers. At the far end, double doors led to the boardroom. Christopher could hear voices inside. The casual confidence of people who believed they controlled the narrative. He pushed open the doors. The conversation died instantly. 12 faces turned toward him, their expressions ranging from confusion to irritation. The boardroom table, a massive oval of polished mahogany, was surrounded by leather chairs that probably cost more than most people's cars. At the head sat Richard Huntington III, his silver hair perfectly styled, his Yale-class ring catching the light. "Excuse me," Huntington said, his tone suggesting Christopher had committed some grave social sin. "This is a private meeting. If you're looking for the service entrance, I'm looking for my seat," Christopher interrupted, walking toward the table. "Christopher Wren, Wren Equity Partners. I believe I own 52% of this company." The silence that followed was absolute. Marcus Webb's coffee cup rattled against its saucer. Patricia Morse's perfectly painted lips formed a small O of surprise. "That's impossible," Huntington sputtered. "The Wren holdings are represented by me." Christopher pulled out a chair and sat down, placing his documentation on the table. "I've been your majority shareholder for 6 months. Funny how none of you bothered to find out who was behind those shell companies." Thomas Brennan, the company's general counsel, grabbed the papers, scanning them with increasing alarm. "Richard, these are legitimate. He controls the voting majority." "But the meeting agenda?" Huntington protested, his face reddening. "We're voting on the new CEO. My son Trevor has been groomed." "Your son," Christopher said, leaning back in his chair, "has an MBA from a diploma mill, and his only business experience is crashing 2 of your other companies. I've reviewed his proposals. They would bankrupt IronFall within 18 months. "How dare you?" Huntington stood, his face now purple. "Security," Christopher laughed. A short, sharp sound. "By all means, call security. I'm sure the financial press would love to hear how you tried to have the majority shareholder removed from his own board meeting." Patricia Morse found her voice. "Mr. Wren, surely we can discuss this rationally. There must be some misunderstanding." "The only misunderstanding," Christopher said, pulling out his phone, "is that you thought you could run this company like your personal country club." He connected his phone to the conference room's display system. "Let me share some interesting findings from my due diligence." The screen lit up with financial records. "Marcus, would you like to explain why IronFall has been paying $3 million annually to a consulting firm that doesn't exist? One registered to your wife's maiden name?" Webb's face went white. Those are legitimate advisory fees." "To advise on what? The company hasn't launched a new product in 3 years." Christopher clicked to the next slide. "Patricia, let's discuss your hiring practices. 93% of executive hires in the past 5 years have been white males. Yet mysteriously, your documentation shows a diverse candidate pool that somehow never quite makes the cut." "Our hiring is based solely on merit," Morse said stiffly. "Really?" Christopher pulled up another document. "Then explain this email where you instructed recruiters to, quote, find candidates who will fit our corporate culture," with a winking emoji. "Subtle." He stood, walking slowly around the table. "Did you know that IronFall's patents for adaptive manufacturing could revolutionize production globally? That our AI integration systems are 5 years ahead of the competition? Of course you don't. You're too busy playing politics and protecting your positions. You can't just walk in here and take over," Huntington said, but his voice had lost its authority. "I'm not taking over," Christopher corrected. "I already own it. I'm just claiming my seat." And my first act as majority shareholder is to call for a vote of no confidence in the current board leadership. You need board approval for major decisions. Brennan. By the lawyer interjected. Christopher smiled. Actually, I don't. Page 47 of your own bylaws. Controlling shareholder can call for emergency restructuring in cases of fiduciary malfeasance, which this clearly is. He returned to his seat. But I'm not unreasonable. Those of you willing to work for actual shareholder value can stay. Those who don't. He shrugged. Well, I hear the job market is tough these days. Huntington slammed his hand on the table. This is outrageous. You can't just... He stopped, his eyes narrowing. Wet. You're that driver from downstairs. I saw you arguing with the doorman. Not a driver, Christopher said mildly, though your staff seemed to think so. Which brings me to another point. He swiped to a new screen showing security footage. This is from 40 minutes ago. Your doorman, directing me to the service entrance. The lobby attendant, assuming I was catering staff. Interesting welcome. For your majority shareholder. How were we supposed to know who you were? Morse demanded. You weren't. That's the point. You saw a black man in an expensive suit and made assumptions. Just like you've been making assumptions about who deserves opportunities in this company. You set us up? Webb accused. I let you show me who you are, Christopher replied. And now I'm showing you who I am. His phone buzzed. Perfect timing. Excuse me one moment. He answered it on speaker. Yes, Mr. Wren. This is Catherine Walsh from the Wall Street Journal. I understand there's been a major development at IronFall Robotics. The board members exchanged panicked looks. There has, Christopher confirmed. IronFall is under new leadership effective immediately. We'll be refocusing on innovation and inclusive growth. I'll have a full statement for you within the hour. Is it true you've been the mystery shareholder all along? It is. Transparency starts today. Catherine. He ended the call and surveyed the stunned faces around him. Now, let's discuss the future. Those of you who want to be part of it, stay. Those who don't, security is available to escort you out. For a moment, nobody moved. Then Samuel Shen, the youngest board member and head of engineering, cleared his throat. Mr. Wren, I've been pushing for R&D expansion for years. If you're serious about innovation, I'm listening. Samuel. One by one, board members began choosing sides. Some, like Chen, and, surprisingly, the CFO Webb, who seemed relieved to have his fraud exposed, stayed to hear Christopher's vision. Others, led by a still sputtering Huntington, gathered their things to leave. This isn't over, Huntington warned as he reached the door. I'll sue. Richard, Christopher said quietly. I own 52% of this company. I have documentation of financial irregularities going back a decade. I have emails showing discriminatory practices. I have recordings of backroom deals that violated SEC regulations. Are you sure you want to make this public? Huntington's shoulders sagged. Without another word, he left, taking his loyalists with him. When the dust settled, 6 board members remained. Christopher looked at each of them in turn. Here's what's going to happen. Full forensic audit starting tomorrow. Any irregularities will be reported to the authorities. No golden parachutes. No quiet resignations with full benefits. You've been stealing from shareholders and employees for years. That ends now. What about operations? Chen asked. We have contracts, obligations, which we'll honor, but we're also going to start investing in our workforce, promoting from within based on merit. not connections. Partnering with HBCUs and community colleges for training programs, using our automation technology to enhance human workers, not replace them. Webb raised a trembling hand. What about those of us who made mistakes? Christopher studied him. Depends on the mistake. Marcus, come clean now. Fully cooperate with the audit. And we'll discuss leniency. Try to hide anything else. And I'll personally ensure you never work in finance again. Over the next several hours, Christopher laid out his vision. IronFall would pivot from a stagnant giant to an innovation leader. They would implement blind recruitment practices, establish a diversity and inclusion board with actual power, and create a whistleblower program to prevent future corruption. I want every employee to know they can report wrongdoing without fear, he said, from the janitor to the senior VP. Everyone's voice matters. As the afternoon wore on, something shifted in the room. The remaining board members went from sullen acceptance to genuine engagement. Chen pulled up technical specifications, excitedly explaining projects that had been shelved. Webb, seemingly relieved to confess, detailed where money had been hidden and how to recover it. Why didn't you just reveal yourself from the beginning? Patricia Morse asked eventually. Why the deception? Christopher considered his answer. Because I needed to see the truth. How you operate when you think no one important is watching. How you treat people you perceive as beneath you. That tells me everything about how you run this company. And we failed. Morse said quietly, yes. But failure can be a teacher if you let it. By the time the sun set over the city skyline, IronFall Robotics had a new direction. Christopher appointed Chen as interim CEO, while a search for permanent leadership began. Webb agreed to full cooperation with authorities in exchange for consideration. Morse resigned, but offered to help establish the new diversity programs as a consultant. As Christopher prepared to leave, Chen walked him to the elevator. You know the media is going to have a field day with this. Mystery Black CEO takes over robotics giant. Boardroom coup at IronFall. Let them, Christopher said. Maybe other boards will think twice before making assumptions about who belongs in their rooms. What made you target IronFall specifically? Christopher smiled. My mother worked on an assembly line for 30 years. Watched automation slowly eliminate jobs while executives got richer. She always said technology should lift people up, not leave them behind. IronFall has the power to do that, if led properly. The elevator arrived. As the doors opened, Chen asked, will you stay on as chairman? For now. But my goal is to make myself unnecessary. Build a structure that runs on merit and innovation, not connections and prejudice. That's the real revolution. As the elevator descended, Christopher thought about the morning's events. The doorman who'd tried to redirect him, the lobby attendant who'd assumed he was help, the board members who'd seen his skin before his credentials, they'd all learned something today. But more importantly, so had everyone watching. The lobby was chaos when he reached the ground floor. Reporters had already gathered, their cameras and microphones, creating a gauntlet between the elevator and the exit. Security tried to maintain order, but Christopher waved them off. Mr. Wren, is it true you've been planning this takeover for months? How much is your stake worth? What are your plans for IronFall? He stopped, facing the cameras with the same calm he'd shown in the boardroom. IronFall Robotics has been sleepwalking while holding the keys to the future. That changes today. We're going to prove that diversity isn't just a buzzword, it's a competitive advantage. That treating workers with respect isn't just ethical, it's profitable. And that sometimes, the person you mistake for the driver might just be the one holding the wheel. What about the board members who left? They made their choice. IronFall is looking forward, not backward. Mr. Wren, what do you say to critics who claim you orchestrated this for publicity? Christopher's expression hardened slightly. I say that I've watched qualified people be overlooked, underestimated, and underpaid for too long. If it takes publicity to change that, so be it. But make no mistake, this isn't about me. It's about the thousands of IronFall employees who deserve leadership that values them. It's about shareholders who deserve honesty. And it's about proving that American business can do better. He pushed through the crowd toward the exit. The same doorman from the morning stood at his post, his face a mix of embarrassment and awe. Mr. Wren, I'm so sorry about earlier. I didn't know. That's the problem, Christopher said, not unkindly. You didn't know, so you assumed. Maybe next time. You won't. He walked out into the evening air, where an actual driver waited with a black town car. As he settled into the back seat, his phone buzzed with messages. His mother, who'd been watching the news. His investment partners, congratulating him on the coup. Shen, to already sending plans for the R&D expansion. But the message that made him smile was from an unknown number. I'm a black engineer at IronFall. I've been passed over for promotion 3 times. Today, watching you walk into that boardroom, I remembered why I got into this field. Thank you for showing us it's possible. Christopher typed back. It's not just possible. It's inevitable. Apply for the CEO position when it posts. Real merit is about to matter at IronFall. As the car pulled away from the Grand Meridian, Christopher gazed out at the city lights. Somewhere out there, in other boardrooms and executive suites, people were having urgent conversations about their own practices, wondering if they, too, had a mystery shareholder watching, questioning whether their assumptions about leadership and worth might come back to haunt them. Good, he thought. Let them wonder. 6 months later, IronFall Robotics reported its highest quarterly earnings in company history. The new products Chen had championed were breaking sales records. The diversity initiatives had attracted top talent from around the world, engineers and designers who'd felt unwelcome elsewhere. The company's stock price had tripled. Christopher stood in the new employee training center, watching a group of community college students learn to operate the latest manufacturing robots. Their instructor, a woman who'd worked her way up from the assembly line, explained how the technology would enhance their skills, not replace them. Mr. Wren, a young black woman approached, wearing an IronFall ID badge. I'm Jasmine Williams, one of the new software engineers. I wanted to thank you personally. For what? For proving it could be done. My professors, my advisors, they all said to be realistic about my expectations, that certain doors wouldn't open for someone like me. But here I am, working on AI systems that will change manufacturing forever. You're here because you're qualified, Christopher reminded her. I just made sure the door was actually open. She smiled. Still, thank you. As she walked away, Christopher's phone rang. Catherine Walsh from the Wall Street Journal again. Christopher, I'm doing a follow-up piece. IronFall's transformation has been remarkable. Any regrets about how you handled the takeover? He thought about it. The ambush, the drama, the public nature of the boardroom coup. None, he said finally. Sometimes you have to shock the system to change it. Besides, they showed me who they were. I simply returned the favor. And the doorman, the one who tried to send you to the service entrance? Christopher chuckled. He's still there, but now he greets everyone the same way. Funny how people can learn when given the chance. Last question. What's next for Christopher Wren? He looked around the training center. at the diverse group of people learning, growing, preparing to lead. There are other companies out there, other boardrooms that need shaking up, other assumptions that need challenging. So this isn't your only takeover? Catherine, I'm just getting started. After ending the call, Christopher walked back through the building. In the executive hallway, portraits of past CEOs lined the Walsa parade of similar-looking men in similar-looking suits. At the end, a new portrait had been added. Samuel Chen, IronFall's first Asian-American CEO. Smiling confidently, but it was the plaque beneath that caught Christopher's eye. A quote Chen had insisted on adding: "Never mistake the driver for the passenger. Never mistake quiet for weak. Never mistake different for less than." Christopher D. Wren. Christopher smiled and kept walking. Somewhere in the city, another board was meeting. Another group of executives was making assumptions. Another company was overlooking talent because it didn't fit their narrow definition of leadership. His phone buzzed with a new message from his assistant. "The Meridian Group's shareholder meeting is next month. I've begun acquiring shares through the usual channels." He typed back, "Good. Make sure I have a controlling interest by then. And book me a room at whatever hotel they're using. The Four Seasons downtown. Should I use your name for the reservation? No? Let them figure it out when I walk in." Because that was the thing about assumptions, they revealed more about the person making them than the person being judged. And Christopher had learned long ago that the best time to show people who you really are is right after they've shown you who they are. The security guard at the exit nodded respectfully as he passed. "Have a good evening, Mr. Wren." "You too, Marcus." The guard blinked in surprise. "You know my name? I make it a point to know everyone who works for companies I own. You've been here 17 years. Your daughter just started collegineering, right?" "Yes. See ya. Full scholarship to Georgia Tech. Tell her IronFall has an excellent internship program. Real hands-on experience. Not just fetching coffee." Marcus's face lit up. "I will. Thank you. See ya." Christopher walked out into the night air. The city hummed around him, full of possibility and challenge. Tomorrow, the work would continue. New innovations to champion. New barriers to break. New assumptions to shatter. But tonight, he'd savor this victory. Not for himself, but for every person who'd been directed to the service entrance. Every qualified candidate passed over for not fitting the culture. Every shareholder whose interests were ignored by entrenched boards. Change was coming to corporate America, one boardroom at a time. And it was arriving in a custom-tailored suit. With controlling interest and a plan, the driver, the real one this time, opened the car door. "Where to?" "Mr. Wren?" Christopher settled into the leather seat, already thinking about the next target. "Home, James. But first, stop by my mother's house. I promised to tell her about today." As the car pulled into traffic, he thought about what his mother would say. Probably something about staying humble, remembering where he came from. She'd be right. Of course, power without purpose was just another form of corruption. But power with purpose, that could change everything. His phone lit up with notifications. Media requests. Partnership proposals. Speaking engagements. The business world had taken notice. Good. The more attention, the harder it would be for other boards to operate in the shadows. One message stood out. From an unknown sender. "Mr. Wren, I'm the CEO of a small manufacturing firm in Detroit. We've been trying to compete with the big players, but keep getting shut out. Would you consider investing? We don't have much, but we have patents that could revolutionize urban farming. Maria Gonzalez." He forwarded it to his team with a note. Investigate. If the patents are real, set up a meeting. Because that was the real revolution. Not just taking over existing companies, but empowering new ones. Not just opening doors, but building new buildings with more doors. Not just claiming a seat at the table, but creating tables where everyone had a seat. The car turned onto his street, tree-lined and quiet. In the distance, his mother's house glowed warmly, porch light on. As always, she'd be waiting with tea and questions. Proud, but still worried about her son taking on powerful people. They needed taking on. Mama. He'd tell her, and I had the receipts. She'd laugh at that, remembering all the times he'd kept meticulous records as a child. Every grade, every achievement, every slight. Building a case for his worth that he'd eventually realize he never should have needed to make. Tomorrow, the Meridian Group would start their own journey toward transformation. Whether they knew it or not, more shares quietly acquired, more research into their practices, more preparation for the day Christopher D. Wren would walk through their doors, and they, too, would probably mistake him for the driver. He smiled at the thought. Let them. Their assumptions would be their downfall, just as they'd been for IronFall's board. And when the truth was revealed, when power shifted hands, when merit finally mattered more than melanin, they'd have no one to blame but themselves. The car stopped in front of his mother's house. Through the window, he could see her sitting in her favorite chair, watching the news. On the screen, his own face stared back the photo from this afternoon's press conference. The headline read, IronFall Revolution, How One Man Changed Corporate America. Not one man, Christopher thought, as he stepped out of the car. One man who refused to accept that the service entrance was his only option. One man who understood that sometimes the best way to change the system is to buy it, and then improve it. He walked up the familiar path, past the garden where he'd learned patience, past the porch where he'd learned to dream big. His mother opened the door before he could knock, her face beaming with pride and concern in equal measure. So, she said, pulling him into a hug, how was your day at the office? Christopher laughed, returning the embrace. Educational. Mama. Very educational. Inside, over tea and her famous peach cobbler, he told her everything. The doorman's dismissal, the board's shock, the moment Huntington recognized him from the lobby. She listened with the same intensity she'd brought to his childhood stories, asking sharp questions, understanding not just the business implications but the human ones. You know they'll come after you now, she said finally. People like that don't give up power easily. I know, but I've got something they don't. What's that? I've got nothing to prove. They've got everything to hide. She nodded slowly, recognizing the truth in that. Your father would be proud. He always said the best revenge against people who underestimate you is overwhelming success. It's not about revenge, Mama. It's about revolution. Same thing. Sometimes. She refilled his tea. What's next? More companies. More boards. More change. He paused. I'm thinking about starting a fund. Specifically, for overlooked founders. Brilliant people with great ideas who can't get traditional funding because they don't fit the pattern. Using their money to fund their competition? She smiled. I taught you well. They talked until late. About strategy and justice. About power and responsibility. When Christopher finally left, his mother walked him to the door. Be careful, she said. But more importantly, be bold. You've got them paying attention now. Don't waste it. Driving home through the quiet streets, Christopher thought about boldness. About the audacity of walking into a boardroom and claiming what was rightfully his. About the courage of every person who'd been directed to a service entrance but kept walking toward the front door. Tomorrow, IronFall would announce its new urban manufacturing initiative, bringing jobs back to communities that needed them. Next week, the first cohort of trainees would start the program. Next month, the new AI-assisted production line would launch, proving that technology and human workers could thrive together. And somewhere, in another city, another boardroom was meeting. Another set of executives was making the same old assumptions. Another company was leaving value on the table because they couldn't see past their prejudices. Christopher smiled in the darkness of the car. They had no idea what was coming. No idea that their majority shareholder might be someone they'd never expect. No idea that their next board meeting might be their last. Because Christopher D. Wren was no longer content to accumulate wealth in the shadows. He was ready to step into the light, one boardroom at a time, and show corporate America what leadership really looked like. It looked like the person they'd mistaken for the driver, and he was just getting started.